grateful that Barbara asked me to lead you all today, and we will have some good discussion together. I know Barbara had a couple of things that she needed to take care of, so no worries if she disappears. And you all are actually going to help me out today. I'm admitting people too, so I'm going to try to keep my attention moving in multiple directions here to make sure if anybody comes in, that they are able to join. So, as Barbara said, our marginalized group that we're talking about today is women. And I asked Barbara, I was like, this is such a very broad field. What are some things we could talk about? And she gave me some really good ideas, especially a project that I've been working on that I'm going to get your help with telling me what we can do with this particular project. So we're going to talk about gender bias and some of the ways that we can see that taking shape, especially for women in the church. Um, but kind of just to put this all in context, when we think about gender bias and the bias that people have against women, ways in which sexism and patriarchy is unconscious and embedded, we know that that is in more than just the church. It is in many, if not every aspect of society in different ways. A few years ago, I came across a documentary that's called Picture a Scientist. And it went into all of the ways in which women in STEM fields experience bias. So, women who are chemists and physicists, and all of the things that they had gone through, the obstacles that they had overcome. And in addition to giving some of the data about women in those fields, it also told their stories. It was women telling their stories of what they had experienced going through things in the science field and all of the things that they had encountered. And as they told those stories, I realized they are telling the story of women in ministry. Um, Women in STEM in this male dominated field and all of the obstacles that they are going through is the same as what women experience. And so you could almost just replace picture a scientist with picture a minister, because the idea was when you picture a scientist, you think of a man with glasses and a lab coat. And when you think of a minister, people tend to think of a man in a suit, with a deep, low voice. And so this I highly recommend it. It's on Prime Video. You do have to rent it, but it's a PBS documentary. But there was one particular part of this that really captured my attention. Um, and it was a tool that they were using to think about bias. I had the video queued up, and Barbara and I were trying to figure out a way to get it to play, and we couldn't figure out how to do it. So I'm going to tell you about it. Uh, there's a woman at Harvard who is a neuroscientist who is talking about how our brains learn to make associations and to make those really quickly. So something like salt, immediately if you see salt and pepper, you know that they go together. It's an association that our brain makes implicitly without us really having to think about it. King and queen, we just immediately know that those things go together. And it comes from the way in which we've been trained and enculturated to make associations. So, from this understanding, they created tests which measure how quickly you associate certain things together. They're called implicit association tests. And so in the film, the scientist, she pulls up it's a gender and science careers implicit association test, and she has a room full of students do this with her, and it's connecting a name which would be a classic male name, and then it's got something that is a classic science word, a classic science field word, and then there are women's names, and then there are words associated with family, and it's trying to connect them with one another. How quickly do you connect men's names with science fields and women's names with family fields, and then comparing that to how quickly you connect women's names with science fields and men's names with family type things. And it's so interesting to watch in this room as they're doing it all together, as they're making those quick associations like Richard, chemist, Jane, family, But then whenever it's Richard family, it takes so much longer for them to make the connection, the Jane chemist, really quickly. So I wondered if these tests might exist online. I thought, hey, this is pretty cool. So I went and I found it. And I found one that was gender and career. So this one had just kind of general career items, office, professional, things like that, and then family kinds of words for women. And as a person who is an advocate for women in certain professional careers, I took this implicit association test and I scored as strongly biased against women in careers because of how slowly I would connect women's names with those career words versus how quickly I would connect men's names with those career words. It's not a predictor of my behavior or my explicit attitudes, but it was revealing something unconscious and implicit that had been enculturated in me to not quickly associate women with those kinds of things, but to more quickly associate women with families. There are lots of these tests out there, by the way, that the idea is that it's measuring some unconscious bias that might exist within us. Um, so again, you can find all these tests online, but I thought, wouldn't it be great if one of these tests existed that would do associations between gender and ministry? How quickly people associate men's names with words related to professional ministry versus women's names with words associated with professional ministry, because this could be a great tool for us to use. Of course, one didn't exist, but I did find the open source code for these tests, and in January I learned to code and I have created one. So right now we are at the testing phase with this of trying to see if there are tweaks that can be made. We're not collecting data on it yet. We're not doing any research with it, but we're trying to get it to be a usable tool to help people be able to maybe make a connection with some unconscious bias that they may have about women in professional ministry roles. Again, tests like this are not a measure of explicit attitudes or even of behavior, but it's a tool to reflect upon what might have been conveyed to you, which you have internalized about how we associate women and men with ministry and family. So I want you to help me out by testing this with me today. Here in a minute, I'm going to drop the link in the chat. I'll put up a QR code too if you can help us do that. And I want to tell you how the test works so that you have an idea about that. It starts off, you may have, there's a couple of questions that sometimes appear before the test, sometimes appear after. But then there are 7 sections of the test itself. And again, it starts off by simply categorizing items. So male names, it's going to ask you to put with male. Female names, it's going to ask you to put with female. And they're not names that are trying to trick you. They're not gender binary names. These are stereotypical male, female names. John, David, Stephen, Matthew for men, those kind of things. Karen, Nancy, Sarah, Rachel for women. And then you're going to categorize words related to ministry: pastor, preaching, church, pulpit, congregation, clergy, reverend, and words related to family: parent, home, family, children, household, domestic, spouse, caregiving. And the order that the test is randomized, the way that it works. And so you might at first wind up putting men's names with ministry and women with family, or it might be switched. It might be women with ministry and men with family. Either way, it's just going to measure your response time. So the idea is that you respond as quickly as you can with your gut. Even if you get it wrong, it makes you redo it. It asks you to do it again. And then at the end of the 7th section, then it's going to give you your results. And it's going to tell you whether you were about the same in how you categorize women's names with ministry and men's names with ministry, or you're slightly or moderately or significantly faster at one than the other. And that is a tool, a reflective tool to think about if you might have some implicit bias. yes, the test can be beaten, by doing certain things, but the goal is not to beat the test. The goal is to respond out of your natural impulse to to see to see how it might be revealing to you and something that you could work with. The test takes about 5 to 10 minutes to take. I would ask, like, maybe as we do that, once I put this up, if you want to go off camera to take it, you can. If you want to stay on camera, either way. I know most of you are already off camera. But once you're done with the test, if you would kind of do a thumbs up or give some sort of reaction in the chat to let me know that you're done, we'll wait on everybody to get done. If you know that you're driving or you're just listening in and so you might not have a way to participate in doing this, just let me know somehow in the chat or some sort of um, signal that you might be able to give to me. You could do it on your computer. You can do it on your phone, since I'm going to put the QR code test up, either way. So before I do that, do you have any questions? Okay. Well, then we're going to take our implicit bias association test with regard to gender and ministry. So I have put the link in the chat, and I am going to put up a QR code as well. Can you see the QR code okay?
I can't see it.
Can't see it. My share is doing something really weird, which is why we could not figure out how to. Well, let's try this now. Can you see it now?
Yes.
Okay. So link is in the chat, QR code on the screen, and give me a thumbs up or some sort of message whenever you're done, and then we'll discuss. Those who have just joined, we are taking something called an implicit bias association test. You can find the link to that in the chat, or you can use the QR code on the screen. Just give me some sort of signal when you are done. We'll wait for everybody to finish, and then we'll have some discussion.
Meredith, I don't see the link is not in the chat. That's
The
what
link is
everybody.
not in the chat. I sent it, okay, the wrong way then. To everyone. There we go. Is that better? You got it, Leona?
Yes, it's there. Okay. They see it.
Meredith, is it possible to repost the link? When I got logged out by accident, I don't see it in the chat now. Sorry to bother y'all.
Okay, now Meredith, with this link, what am I supposed to do with the link? Uh-uh.
Sorry, what did you say, Leona?
Oh, no, I said, what am I supposed to do with the link? The link, I see now. That's okay. So you could do it either on the link or the
Right, either
barcode.
way.
Oh, okay, okay, good. Okay, then I am finished.
Okay, we got a couple more we're waiting on.
Okay, I'm surprised. I'm not always so techy.
Miranda, are you finished? Yes. Okay. Well, since Christina said not to wait for her, I think that's all of us. I would love to have some discussion with you all if you're willing to. You don't have to put your camera on if you weren't planning to do that today, but I'd love to hear from you, at least hear your voices with some reflection on this. First, can we kind of just talk a little bit about your results, and then I want to get your feedback on the experience itself as we're kind of in this testing phase with this tool. Um, so, kind of first of all, you don't have to share what your results are, um, but did you feel like the time that it's expressing is reflective of your conscious beliefs about bias, or was it different? How did you feel about your results?
Well, I was quite surprised, but I think that's how I'm just wired because I could share my results. It says you were faster, slightly faster at sorting males with ministry and females with family than females with ministry and males with families. Because I think some of the response could actually have been both. But apparently, according to this, I associate males with ministry. But actually, I associate both. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah,
But the
yeah.
test said fast at sorting males with ministry and females with fast. I think that's just how I'm wired, because females, you think about domestics and children, and so that's the first thing that, although we do have males that also do head of households and handle their children. So it was quite interesting.
Yeah, same, Leona. I always score, I'm willing to share as moderately faster male with ministry than
Hmm.
than the reverse. And it
Yeah,
is not reflective of my explicit
it,
beliefs,
exactly.
but it is how I've just been wired to think and my experiences. I
Yes,
have such a
yes.
higher percentage of experiences of men with ministry
Hmm.
than of
Hmm.
women with ministry. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's how the church is. We always see the men as being the head, in the past. Now we're seeing females evolve, but it's like the male has to be over.
Right.
So it's a nice test, though.
Anybody else? What was your experience?
I would like to share.
Yes, ma'am.
Purposely selected female for ministry, and the X came up.
That would mean like you did a wrong thing and it would give you another chance to do it correctly.
Yeah, so then I selected male, and it was okay. So I
Yeah.
purposely wanted to. I purposely selected female for ministry, but yet it told me that I was wrong.
Yeah, the instructions are telling you which one to do each time. So sometimes the instructions want you to put men with ministry, and sometimes the instructions
Mhm.
want you to put female with ministry. And then it's measuring the time it takes for you to do each one.
Okay,
Do you
okay.
do it faster when you do man with ministry, or do you do it faster when you do women with ministry?
And that was the results that I did place male with ministry.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I just did it on purpose to say females are with ministry too. And I
Yeah.
understood the instruction. I wanted to see what would occur when
Yeah.
red X pop up. Okay, can you just put a small X, not the capital X, not the
Yeah.
capital X? So, yeah, I thought it was interesting as well. And of course, that is in some areas, the church structure.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I asked a minister about that, and he said it's because in the Greek, pastors and ministers are men, are not female. Oh, okay, fine. We're in America, we're speaking English.
And also, we have the feminine of deacons in the Bible too. And some folks are against that. But
Yes,
yeah, at
definitely.
least it also, Carolyn, will give you a big X whenever it's time to put women with ministry. If you try to put a man with ministry, it'll give you a big X then too.
I saw that, but I didn't do that on purpose because I understood that, yes.
Yeah. Anybody else? I see Melanie said hers were surprising. Um, maybe I think it's saying you scored faster with female with ministry and male with family. That's great. It's interesting to think about how our brains work. Yeah. Anybody else? Sandra or Christina? Christina, were you ever able to get it to work?
Yes, but I was going so quickly that I really didn't do a great job of reading the instructions after the first two sets because I wouldn't go and I was trying to catch up with everybody. So because of that, I think I don't remember each of the sections. I was trying to read the results, and one of the things said faster with the male one, but I'm going to retake it,
Yeah.
and see when I'm not trying to like hurry through to get back on here. So sorry
Yeah.
about the trouble that I had.
No, that's all right. So some of the and Sandra, did you want to share any?
Oh, sure. Thank you.
Yeah.
I really didn't realize that I was being timed um, until halfway through. And then I was just trying to speed the way I was answering.
Mhm.
But it just came up, yeah, male associating male with ministry as well. So I'm curious, similar to Christina, I'm curious by retaking it, um,
Yeah.
what how does it how do the results come up?
Yeah. When I took and of course, I've tested this one so many times as I've been trying to get it to work. Um, and even I score the same almost every time. It's so interesting. Even when I'm thinking about something different, as long as I let my gut guide, I score exactly the same. Which which I feel like is probably true.
Mhm.
Simply because of the way in which I was brought up and enculturated. That
Exactly.
there is something deep within me that still fights against that. Um,
Mhm.
I even I have been curious, and we'll see when we get to the place of testing this more broadly. If women in ministry score differently than like laity, because I even wondered if I was scoring strongly against it because of some internalized bias of like knowing the experiences that I have had and turning it inward on myself of thinking, well, I'll never be good enough. I never really am seen as a minister or something like that. I've wondered if there's some internalization that goes on and thinking about what's happening in my subconscious to make these associations. Um, was there anything that might have made taking this test easier to understand as I'm in testing phase for this?
I understood it. It was clear. Um, just the idea of what is structured for men and what's structured for male, what's structured for female, is
Mm-hmm.
already been stated. It's in us. Because we grew
Yeah.
up, especially as I'm 69, so at that age, at this age, I knew as a child only men were in behind the podium, only. And we were allowed to stand on the pulpit as a child to do my Easter speech,
Mm,
something for children, but otherwise off limits.
yeah.
Well, that's built in as a child, and now as a senior, to see the difference and to experience it, it is in some areas, in some churches, I'm not allowed. I had to stand on the floor and
Yeah.
talk. And that's another teaching that I need. what makes the pulpit sacred that a woman can't stand on it? What I don't understand that part. I haven't received any teaching to know why that is. Can you share that?
Yeah, Carolyn, I think you probably haven't received that teaching because it doesn't exist.
Ah,
It's something that people have decided and made up and perpetuated. And I don't think that there is any biblical basis for
ah,
the pulpit being
Exactly.
gendered.
hmm, interesting.
Exactly. Yeah, it's just a male gender thing, you know.
Yeah,
Women was just, you know, in the kitchen with the children and should be quiet, you know.
yeah,
And so there's no books, there's no nothing that said that a man should be up there, you know.
yeah.
I know I was brought up in a Baptist church too, and it was I didn't actually see a woman in the pulpit until I came to Virginia, and by that time I was a grown woman. I was like, oh my goodness, there's a woman up there preaching, you know. But in New York, where I grew up, it was just my pastor, and there was no females even on the pulpit.
Hmm.
Whereas in New York now, you see more females that are actually pastors of the church. So the history has changed, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
And it
Mhm.
has changed in generations. Sister Madison, my experience when I was pastoring in Massachusetts, I had a young family, um, and the mother's daughter. They were trying to look for, a new church and all, and the daughter kept telling her, um, that they needed to find the right kind of church because the
Mhm.
daughter, who was little, had only seen a woman in the pulpit. So when they,
Mm.
stumbled upon the church I was pastoring, like, okay, this is the one because this is what I'm used to. So, um,
Mhm.
yeah.
It's those
Yeah, that's
associations. Yeah, if it's what we've seen, it
what
kind
we've
of just
seen. What we've seen, we tend to think that that's the only way, but we're learning now
yeah.
it's not God's only way. And so I have trained my daughter over the years, you know, women are, you know, preachers and can be pastors, you know. And so she's like, and she's 44, she's like, out with the old rules. Now we can rise, you know. So that generation is like, they're not sitting back and just being quiet, you know, they're taking their position and their role, you know, in the church. And if not, they go find the church that actually fit and represent who they are. You
Right.
know, she's
Yeah.
very bold in her opinion.
Yeah. Well, my goal with this tool is that it might become a part of some training that we do for people in congregations to recognize, even if they have changed their beliefs and their perspectives and their attitudes on women in ministry, that there may still be something that exists within them that means they think about, however consciously or unconsciously, and maybe even treat women a little bit differently than they do men. And it's a part of this way that we have been enculturated. And so, like all forms of bias, the goal is to make ourselves aware of it so that then we can be reflective on how we respond and how we then interact with people. Um, so I appreciate you all taking it and helping me test it out. If you have other things you want to send me in an email to share, that'd be great. But as we were kind of doing this exercise, one thing I wanted to share with you, and I'll just take a few minutes, is to think about how this kind of bias exists as women as the topic of the day, but in the dynamics between women ourselves. So
Mhm.
yes, potentially bias exists as how men treat women, but that bias also exists within women and how we treat each other. So real quickly, my background, in addition to being in church ministry and denominational ministry, before I did this job, I was a professor in a seminary, and my area of scholarship was called Imperial Critical Approaches to Biblical Interpretation. And what that meant was we took models from social sciences and anthropology of understanding how power gets exerted and how
Mhm.
power gets negotiated from people who exist under power, we took those frameworks and then we were apply it to the way we read the Bible. Seeing how people are exerting power and responding and negotiating power in the biblical text, how biblical texts are being used as negotiation or exertion of power. And my particular angle in this field was to think about how the performance of gender is intertwined with how we exert and negotiate power.
Mm.
So all of these frameworks that I had, I brought with me into this work at Baptist Women in Ministry, and informs the way that I think about things. One of the concepts from post-colonial theory that we use is called horizontal violence. And the idea behind horizontal violence is when people exist vertically under power, under oppression, they know that when they act out against their oppressors, which is where all of their frustration lies, that they expect retaliation. And so many times they're trying to negotiate in order to alleviate that fear of retaliation. We don't want to make it worse for ourselves. We're trying to find a way to make it better. But if we fight against it, it tends to make things worse. So in that case, all of this frustration with the situation that really is directed vertically, but can't come out that way, winds up coming out horizontally against other people who also exist under the same systems of oppression. So we wind up being frustrated with one another, and our aggression comes out against one another. And a part of this then is also the fact that systems of oppression create this understanding within people who exist under them that there is a limited amount of opportunity available. So patriarchy tells women there is a limited amount of opportunity and benefit that's available to women, which means in my mind, if you have opportunity and benefit, that takes away my opportunity and benefit if it is so limited. So competition within this horizontal aggression makes it all worse. Our staff read this book together that we really like. It's called Glass Walls: Shattering the 6 Gender Bias Barriers Still Holding Women Back at Work. One of the barriers is hostility, and a form of that hostility is female hostility. Women expressing hostility against one another, which, adding this post-colonial theory into it, we might describe as horizontal sexism. So in this book, here is how they describe this. They say, not all harassment or mistreatment comes from men. To protect themselves in male work culture, some women reinforce sexist norms against other women. Female hostility stems from women's mistrust of, dislike for, or prejudice against other women. And so women may distance themselves from each other through competition, slights, and outright bullying. And I always want to add, subconsciously, we're doing this as a reaction to the patriarchy. Not always is it about each other. It's just coming out against each other. So a few ways that they talk about how this looks. One is queen bee behavior. So this is top-down hostility, okay? When a few women are able to obtain positions or opportunity within a male-dominant system, then as women, when you're a part of the few, you're rewarded with praise and advancement and rewards, and you feel like you're special. And so then these women know, we had to work so hard, again, harder than all these other men, harder than other women. And then when they see other women coming along, that's the potential where those rewards and benefits that they've experienced might disappear. And so the top down is those few women who got those opportunities who begin to sometimes exert that against women who haven't had them. So in women in ministry, this is how I've overtly seen this. Some older women in ministry have real resentment of younger women in ministry who have not had to face the same obstacles. Women who have been able to create boundaries. women who've been able to negotiate their pay, women who've been able to get parental leave. I've seen older women in ministry say things like, well, we just have to do it the way the men have always done it. And so they've never had parental leave. We shouldn't have parental leave. And really, they're not saying that against the women. It's the system which has taught them to think it has to be this way as the men have always had it. And because they had to struggle so much, then they wind up exerting it horizontally against these other women. I've seen it in senior pastors who have certain attitudes about women who have not served as senior pastors. I've seen it in the ways in which if one woman gets uplifted, that other women tend to say, well, who does she think she is? I've been over here doing this for 30 years. I have a demon. I have a PhD. I've been ordained all this time, and she's just now catching up and she gets all of that praise. Rather than immediately wanting to join in celebrating that our sister has been seen and recognized for the gifts that she has. I've also seen this kind of come out subconsciously sometimes. Sometimes women who've existed in these systems that have been created by and for men wind up preferring to work with men. They prefer to go to their male colleagues first. When a man raises their hand, they'll call on them before they might call on a woman, even if the woman's idea is more credible, simply because they have been taught to exist within the system. It's an ingrained suspiciousness of other women. So we see it kind of come top down, but we also can see it come bottom up and peer-to-peer level. Sometimes it's called, mean girl behavior, and how girls are mean to one another, that competition, insecurity, gender stereotypes. Sometimes when women are in positions of leadership and then they have women who are in positions that are lower than theirs, it's like women who might have female assistants, female associates. Sometimes when you are a woman existing under another woman's leadership, it feels differently for her to say something to you and give you direction than when a man says something to you and gives you direction. And so then from that bottom up perspective, again, it's like, well, who does she think she is? She's just a woman just like me. Who does she think she is to tell me what I'm supposed to do? She's acting out of her leadership, out of her role, out of what she is supposed to do. And so then women hold women in leadership to different standards than they do men who might be their bosses. So, for example, if a female boss tells a woman, tries to hold a particular standard and says, you got this in late or whatever, then we might be more tempted to say back to her, well, you worked on something till the last minute last week, that you would never say to a male boss. But because it's a female, there's that kind of female hostility that exists. Same in the kind of wannabe and the behavior of like, if a woman or an author or someone starts getting positions and elevation that you think you deserve, then we have a tendency to feel this twinge in our gut of like, who does she think she is? What about us? How come no one has seen me? And rather than taking that frustration out on the people who did the lifting up, we take it out on the woman who needs to be celebrated. And when we really should be taking it out on the people who have done this unfair recognition that did not take into account all the other women all along. What this winds up looking like is women who are on a higher level end up having to go above and beyond in order for women who work closely with them to be able to think that they will be accepted and received. So they might go take that, perform tasks that are outside of their responsibility. They might be the first to volunteer to bring the side dish at the potluck, because they think if I do this, then maybe my female assistant won't think that I think I'm better than her. I'll bring to the potluck too. And it has a name. It's called status level burdening. that happens to women who are in higher positions, that they have to carry this extra emotional weight of making sure the women below them are not having a negative reaction to them since they are in a leadership position. Um, we see it in peer-to-peer ways as well. When that woman gets that position that is level to ours, we feel that sense of, well, I probably not consciously, but probably we see it and we go like, huh? Huh? Like her? What? When really we should be going like, yay, I'm so happy that a woman, rather than judging her. Um, this has been something I have seen in our organization's history. The first 10, 20 years, the women who were a part of Baptist Women in Ministry had a lot of conflict with one another because when you're in an advocacy organization, it tends to be started by the people who need it the most. And then the organization itself becomes an opportunity for an advancement. And so then there winds up being all of this tension about, no, we need to do it this way. No, we need to associate with these people and not these people. No, we need to do this and all of that female hostility comes out in the way that we think it needs to be done, when really we just need to be lifting each other up and standing with one another. For some of the foremothers of our organization, when I was hearing their stories a few years ago and hearing about these times of tension, I said to a couple of them as they would tell their stories of, there's this theory called horizontal violence. And then I would explain how it works, for people who exist under power. And I remember so distinctly that moment with each of them when they would look at me and go, oh my gosh, I was never mad at so and so. I was just mad at the patriarchy. And now I haven't talked to her for 40 years. And I thought I was mad at her, but I never really was. Sometimes just even understanding that this exists can help us kind of have an awareness of it and maybe almost give each other a little bit of grace in it. So, here are in our last couple of minutes, I had a few points of just things to maybe like, what are we going to do about it? The first is to be aware that these feelings of unconscious bias against other women might be ingrained in us and it might shape our gut responses. When you have that moment of questioning another woman's success, ask yourself, am I doing this just out of an enculturated suspiciousness of other women, or is it actually warranted? Sometimes just being aware of this can be helpful. And it can be helpful then as we're aware then to watch and make sure we're not blocking other women's opportunities. When I want that speaking opportunity for myself, but yet it probably would benefit someone else more, I don't want to block. I want to lift up. So being aware of the ways in which we might be able to especially come together and bring other women along with us when we do have opportunities can be really good. My second thing that I want to mention, in addition to being aware of when it's happening within us, is to also be aware of when it's happening to you. Sometimes when you're experiencing that conflict with another woman, if you can get in your mind that maybe something is happening under the surface that is not just simply she hates me, but she hates the patriarchy. And right now, what's happening between us is a result of the way in which patriarchy has affected us. That can maybe help us find a way to talk it out and relate to one another. Especially like, if this is happening with a coworker, this doesn't mean you have to try to find a way to become best friends with your coworkers or that you have to do the thing where you're going to make her cookies or whatever. But it does mean we have to find a way to name what's really going on, which might be something that we're not actually saying, so that we can work together in a productive way so that we can lift each other up. A way to do this too that I have found as I recognize when it's happening to me is to reach out to trusted advisors, mentors. and try to let them reflect, because a lot of times people who know me are able to say, you know what, sometimes you do that. And so you might want to check yourself on that. And then other times they're able to say, you know what, you don't do that. And so this is probably something deeper that's going on. And then my last thing is, if you are the leader of a church or organization or ministry, find a way to replace competition with collaboration in the ministry that you're leading. Create environments that make room for multiple women. It is possible to hold accountability and collaboration in tension. We can have accountability to those who are in leadership while existing in a collaborative environment. It takes more work, but it's possible. And I think that's the way we come together as sisters in this, is to be able to lift one another up and find ways to collaborate with one another. So stronger together. Yes, ma'am. I think of the daughters of Zelophehad all the time. They went together to Moses. We got to read that Numbers 27 once again. Rather than Machlah saying, I'm going to do it, I'm the oldest sister, y'all step back. She said, let's go together. This is about all of us. All of the ships rise together. So I apologize that it took us a little extra time to do the test, and that I went to the last minute here. But I hope that that was helpful for you to think about and maybe examine, is some of that bias actually existing within you? And how might that even help you think about the way in which you relate to other women, lay women in your church? I've often heard from women that it's the lay women in the church who are the biggest opponents of women in ministry rather than men. So how you have those relationships, how we encourage one another, so that we can all succeed together.